Happy Friday and happy Fridays with Fidelman. I'm Cheryl Fidelman, the Conscious Codependence Coach. And today's topic on Fridays with Fidelman is codependence and speaking clean. Codependence and what I call speaking clean. And this is, I guess, a part 2 or an add-on to a video I did a while back called Curiosity versus Trick Questions. So I'm going to talk about what it is to actually ask a pure question from curiosity and wonderment, as opposed to asking a trick question or not speaking clean, which would be adding some sort of emotional undertone or judgment or subliminal energetic message that is completely different than the words you're actually saying, which could confuse somebody or put somebody on the defense, especially us as codependents. If we can't quite understand what the message is that's coming at us, we get confused. And so, all right, I'll go into all of that, and go ahead, please like or subscribe, leave a comment, and all right, here we go. All right, speaking clean, which is synonymous with the number one practice in my conscious codependence recovery work, the number one practice of being a sovereign independent being, which is the antithesis of codependence, is curiosity. So speaking clean is synonymous with practicing curiosity. Now, I've had a lot of clients over time say, Cheryl, I was being curious. I said, why did you do that? Or Cheryl, I was being curious with my partner. I said, why did you bring the car there? Why didn't you bring the car here? So I want to be clear that just because something ends in a question mark or it's in the form of a question, it's not necessarily pure curiosity. So when we're delivering a question with a judgment or a directive, or making somebody wrong about what they did, or injecting how we thought it should have went, but we're asking them why they did this thing, but not, we're implying that we think they should have done it some other way, or questions that can kind of be unanswerable to people, like, why did you make me feel this way? Or why did you do this to me? Or you didn't know it was going to make me feel this way? Didn't you know it was going to make me feel this way? These are kind of unanswerable questions, and what is underneath the question is, I feel pain, I'm hurt, I don't know how this could have happened, or what was going on for you. Another trick question is, what were you thinking, right? So it's not a real question coming from pure wonderment, coming from without implying judgment or implying offense, like they did something wrong or they should have been thinking something else. Why we're asking these trick questions is the place to get to. What am I feeling? What am I interpreting that's having me look outside myself in these codependent moments to the other person as to why this happened? What were you thinking, right? So we're looking at somebody else as to why we feel the way that we feel, which is why we're asking these trick questions. There's a hurt, there's a pain, there's a feeling that is motivating the question, but we're not literally expressing that feeling or interpretation or pain. We're saying it, we're hiding it by saying it as a question to another person. And that question that has a subliminal message can put somebody on the defense. So they'll may start speaking in one or more of my 3 tenets of conscious codependence. They may start talking because they want you to want them back. They understand you're mad at them, and so they want to be wanted, or they need to be needed, or they kick into starting to prove themselves. And then you never ultimately get your answer. The conversation just starts going in a circle. You never ultimately get your answer, and you never ultimately get to express exactly how you're really feeling, which is why you asked the question to begin with. And sometimes we finally do get to express how we feel, but it's like in an explosive state because everything, all the repression and the resistance and asking trick questions has built up so much that we explode. Another angle to look at this from is for those of us who identify as codependents, or we have codependent habits or tendencies, when a trick question is coming at us, this is when we may default into one or more of my three tenets of conscious codependence. So there's what seems like a trick question is coming at us, right? They're saying, why did you buy the red sweater? Why didn't you buy the blue sweater? And we're going, I don't know how to answer that question. Sometimes we may think, well, maybe they have a better idea than I do. Maybe I should have gotten the blue sweater. Maybe I'm just wrong and they're right. Because we often trust somebody else's opinion or direction or judgment more than we trust our own initial choice or our own initial intuition. And so we'll question ourselves, or we'll kick into proving why we made the choice that we made. And so when we have a message coming at us with a mixture, the words are saying one thing, the energy is saying another thing, the inflection of the voice is saying another thing, we go into shock and confusion, and we usually kick into proving ourselves. As opposed to pausing, noticing what's happening with us, and leaning into curiosity, which might mean, why are you asking me that? Or what are you thinking? Or what's your interpretation? Or are you mad at me? Are you upset with me? I can't tell. And for a lot of us codependents, that kind of curiosity was traumatized out of us when we were children. Because especially for those of us who grew up and were raised with mothers with borderline personality disorder, certainly there are fathers that have these tendencies as well, where they had an intensity about them, but what they were saying seemed kind of benign. So we couldn't tell often with the communication in the household, am I in trouble? Am I safe? What's going on here? Myself included, I know I've shared this a lot of times. Sometimes my mom would be just screaming that dinner was ready. And I would think, I remember, is it just dinner or is the house burning down? I mean, with the level of communication, it was just the lines were so crossed with how communication was being delivered and the facial expressions. And so for a lot of us got curiosity traumatized out of us. Like we didn't have the space to ask, I'm not sure if you're mad at me. I can't tell if you like me. I can't tell if we're safe here. I can't tell if you even, think I'm a valid human. I mean, it can go that far for some of us. And so when a trick question is coming at us, and we may not even be sure if it's a trick question, maybe it's not, but we're just confused about the message that's coming at us. And so we get to train ourselves, and this is a huge part of the training in my conscious codependence recovery work. We get to train ourselves how to be curious about how we're interpreting things and how we're feeling and the sensations and emotions in our body, and then be curious about the other person and give ourselves permission to take up space with that curiosity. Give ourselves permission to have that kind of voice, because for a lot of us codependents, we don't have that kind of voice. We go, I'm not going to ask what they mean, just going to answer what I think they mean. I'm not going to ask them what they actually want. I'm just going to assume that I know what they actually want. I'm not going to ask them that they're mad if they're mad at me. I'm just going to assume that they're mad at me and then just be obedient, or just figure out how to get them to like me again. Another way or another category that we can insert this idea of speaking clean is when we quote people. So when we say something like, why did you say that your mother wasn't coming to dinner? When we tell people what they said, because most of the time, we didn't hear actually what they said, or we didn't hear the intention behind what they said, or it's a memory of what they said, so we're recreating what we think they said. And so the best way to say something like that would be, what I remember you saying was that your mother couldn't make it to dinner. Is that what you said? Or am I remembering that correctly? So it's a sharing of a memory and a curiosity, as opposed to a direct quote, or holding people to what to your righteousness, thinking you're right about exactly what they said. Because we are all simply recalling memories, even if it was 30 seconds ago. Did you say XYZ, or what I remember you saying was, or my experience of what you said was? Because everything is our memory or experience of what happened. So speaking clean is having what you're saying and your emotions aligned with the message that you're giving. And if it's not aligned, because sometimes we're so triggered, there's so much going on inside of us and we want to speak anyway, that we can acknowledge how we're feeling. So in other words, it would be something like, I'm really angry and frustrated right now, and I purely simply just want to know, where did you go yesterday? It's a real question. I know it's coming out with anger. I want to honor and notice that I'm feeling angry, and I want you to know that I purely want to know the answer to this question, and I'm not blaming you. So if our emotions are going to be different and not align with what we're asking, that we actually take responsibility for all of the messages that we're giving, the energetic messages, the languaging messages, the literal words that we're saying, the inflection of our voice. And this is also a huge part of codependence recovery, or conscious codependence recovery, where we become as aware of ourselves as possible. When I say aware of ourselves, I don't mean so self-conscious that we're just constantly trying to get it right and constantly notice, how we are, but that we're just so grounded and aligned in our body that we can feel an inner connection within. And when we're connected within, we're connected with other. When we're not connected within and we're off, we're usually not connected with other. And we're usually helping to create whatever disconnect seems is happening. So at least if we can honor and notice and point to and say, what's going on in here is disconnected, and I have a question for you. So we're having, that is a pure, authentic, intimate way of communicating. And the first point of that communication is communication with self. Where am I disconnected here? And am I still going to communicate within this disconnection? I'm going to communicate all of that. And for a lot of this wasn't demonstrated to us when we were children. People were just talking, no matter what they felt, no matter what they think. They were blaming and accusing and judging and telling people to, whether they were saying it literally or figuratively or energetically, shutting people down around them, being dominant with their points of view and their opinions and their judgment. I mean, people were just blah, right? They were just saying, being, doing, feeling, with no real inner compass and no real understanding or energetic connection to how they were impacting others. And so this, practice of curiosity and conscious codependence recovery is about raising our awareness to how we are impacting others, and raising our awareness as to how and when and to what level we're speaking from inner alignment or inner misalignment. And when we are receiving messages from people, for those of us who are codependents, we're receiving messages from people where they may not be aligned with themselves, and they may not even know that they have a misalignment, but they're talking to you anyway. And we still kick into one or more of the 3 tenets of conscious codependence. We so easily get dominated by people, even though that person may totally be disconnected from themselves. Another habit of codependence, and like I've said before, we don't all have all the habits. There's so many different habits and behaviors. Some of us have our own unique cluster of them, is idolizing people, especially our bosses or certain family members or our spouses or partners. We idolize them. They're on some sort of pedestal, that what they say is way more gospel or way more accurate or way more true than what we would have to say. And so in that idolizing piece, we will set aside how we're feeling and the confusion in how we're feeling when they're speaking. We set aside any possibility that they actually might not be speaking clean. They actually might not be giving us a healthy, aligned message, and they might not be aligned within themselves. But we still receive their message as if they're like our idols and it's the truth. And so we conform ourselves. Forget about the confusion. I didn't quite understand what they said. I don't even quite believe what they said. I'm not aligned with what they said. I don't want to make the choice or decision that they're telling me what to do, but we set all of that aside because we're loyal to this obedience, to the obedience of this idol. Myself included. I mean, I used to idolize the men that I dated, and idolize might seem like a very strong word. But I'm going to use that word because it's like they just trumped everything that I thought. I allowed them to trump everything I thought, that I just acquiesced. And for a lot of us codependents, acquiescing is a huge part of our nervous system. We just hand ourselves over. We just hand our brain over. So our connection to ourselves, staying in relationship with ourselves, gives us the access to say to people things like, I don't agree, or can you tell me more about what you're saying, or what do you mean by that, or is there something you're feeling when you're saying that we actually can be so curious. Not trick questions, not what do you mean, right? So that's not a trick question. I mean, that's a trick question. That we're actually purely give ourselves the space and the permission to be in wonderment and wonder what is happening with somebody else when they're communicating with us. Because yeah, we might not always know, but codependence is a habit of assuming that we know and assuming that we have to acquiesce or just agree or even judge ourselves as overreacting or being too sensitive or I ask too many questions, right? We judge ourselves. We judge our own existence and put somebody else's existence in the more valid or dominant state. These are all the things that will lock us into codependence and keep us away from curiosity, and curiosity equals connection. All right, I can speak forever about curiosity. It's the number one most important practice of my work. I help people heal their nervous system so that they can have inner alignment, regulate their nervous system, connect with self, and then lean into curiosity. So this is, just a huge, huge piece of my conscious codependence work. Thank you so much for listening and considering what I say. I just want to make my first, it might be my first, maybe second, I don't know, announcement that I'm the 3 Tenets of Conscious Codependence book is well on its way into creation. The proposal's almost done, so I just want you to know that the book is being worked on. It will be coming out, and I'm just really excited to create this and birth it and give it all to all of you who've been listening and watching and working with me. So, all right, have a wonderful weekend. Happy healing, and life is now.